Now we have a distinguished speaker, Professor Alecia Long. To give you a little bit of information about her, she received her Ph.D. in American History from the University of Delaware in 2001, and her revised dissertation was published in 2004 under the title The Great Southern Babylon, Sex, Race, and Respectability in New Orleans, 1865 to 1920. In 2005, the book was awarded the Julia Cherry Spurl Prize for the best work published in Southern women's history. She is also co-editor and authored an article in the recently published volume, Occupied Women, Gender, Military Occupation, and the American Civil War. Dr. Long teaches at LSU, the history of sexuality, and she is actually on my committee, so I know her personally, and she's a wonderful woman. She has studies basically the histories of race, gender, and sexuality in New Orleans and in the South. And she's a director of an amazing project called the Oral History Project, Listening to Louisiana Women, which captures women's voices and preserves them for future prosperity so people can understand what it is like to suffer issues with reproductive choice when they're infringed upon, what it's like to, all sorts of things dealing with equal pay. And so with that, I would like to turn the mic over to Dr. Long.
Hey, I'm Alecia, and thank you for having me here, and I'm so sorry you had to hear some of my academic resume. Sorry about that. Because really, I'm here not so much as a representative or a spokesperson for my institution. I'm very proud to be a professor. But I'm really here as a woman, a Louisiana woman, a citizen, and a taxpayer, and a person who is absolutely disgusted by what passes for legislation aimed at women in this state. I think some of you probably just had to pay some taxes to the state of Louisiana, and you should realize that that entitles you to fair and full representation as a citizen of this state. And what is disgusting is that our legislators spend time saying that they're small government advocates, but what small government seems to be to them is to be just small enough to look into your bedroom window or to develop policies that get into your most intimate body parts. And that is not what small government needs to be about. I have worked with Planned Parenthood, and I'm a strong supporter of the work of Planned Parenthood. And as a historian, I would just say that, it's not that long ago that something like Planned Parenthood was completely illegal in the United States. And it was illegal on the basis of something called the Comstock Act, which was passed in 1872. And that act made certain kinds of materials obscene and said that they couldn't be sent through the mail. And one of the things that was considered obscene under the Comstock Act was contraception of any kind. And so if we let legislators sort of make decisions for us, you can be guaranteed that they're going to extend those sorts of definitions to limit our rights when it's convenient for them and based upon their religious beliefs, but not necessarily our convictions as women. So I would just say that, the right to have contraception as a single person, as a married person, is something that's very new. It's something that's happened in my lifetime, and it's something that could be rolled back. And for a long time, the argument that we were having as a culture was around the issue of abortion. And a lot of people said abortion is wrong. And honestly, I think that's a difficult decision for anybody who has to make it, but that's an individual's decision, and that's a constitutionally protected right. And we need to demand that that constitutionally protected right stop being infringed upon. But in a more theoretical way, what underwrites the right to abortion is the right to privacy that the United States Supreme Court located in the Constitution. And that right to privacy also underwrites some very other important civil rights cases directed at women. For instance, Griswold versus Connecticut, which said the United States government cannot interfere in the rights of people to have contraception and to use it at will as long as they were married. But not until 1972 did the United States Supreme Court extend that right to single and unmarried people. In a case called Eisenstadt v. Baird. That's very, very recent, and that's also under threat. So if you don't believe in abortion and you don't think Roe is important, then what you're throwing out the window is an established right to privacy for women in their lives, and that's incredibly important, and it's something we have to defend, both in Roe and Eisenstadt and Baird and Griswold v. Connecticut, and in terms of race relations, Loving v. Virginia, which allowed people to marry across the color line, and I think ultimately will be used as the decision which will allow people to marry if they are gay and have their full civil rights as well. I'm also going to say that as disgusted as I am by the Republican Party, to me, ultimately, this is not a right or left issue. This is an issue about gender. It's an issue about gender politics, and these are issues about individual autonomy, and particularly individual bodily autonomy. And these are the things that are being infringed upon. In 1758, Benjamin Franklin wrote a question and a response in a publication he authored, and the question was, what are women for? And the answer that Benjamin Franklin came up with to the question of what women are for is that women are to gratify men's passions. That's what women are for. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised that Benjamin Franklin would have written that in 1758. But what I was really shocked by in February is that a conservative columnist named James Poulos wrote a column called What Are Women For? And this column was posted to a blog called The Daily Caller, and it was mostly a column sort of full of snarky, sophomoric, left-baiting, sort of we would need to get under the skirts of this question and discover what's really at issue. And James Poulos really came down on the side of saying that what women are really for and where we can locate the source of their power in society is through, quote, their special relationship with nature, unquote. And so James Poulos was saying that the way we can sort of best navigate and empower ourselves in culture as potential reproducers. And I respect the choice of all my sisters who have had children and raised those children to be good, feminist citizens in our republic, male and female. But lots of women don't want to have children, and that's okay too. The important thing is choice, that whatever we choose to do, whether we stay home and raise our children, whether we seek Ph.D.s, women are not a social problem to be solved. And so even the issue of asking what are women for is in itself offensive. Women are for whatever they want to be for. And so I just think this social moment is a very important one to sort of stop and reflect on all the ways in which our legislators condescend to us constantly, and in ways that we sometimes don't even recognize because they go on all the time. And it's the Louisiana legislature's failure over years and years and years to fail to endorse equal pay acts for women in the state of Louisiana. And so to make it okay to pay women 67 cents on that men do, and this is not acceptable. These are our representatives, and we have to let them know. We have to let them know how we feel. We have to write them. We have to call them. We have to, if need be, make ourselves obnoxious to them, because they are representing maybe a majority of the electorate when they are proponents of conservative social politics. But we're taxpayers, we're citizens, and we have a right to be represented at the legislature in the state of Louisiana. I guess I would just finally say that there's probably a lesson for all of us in the civil rights movement as regards race in Louisiana. And that movement, depending on how you count and how you date the origins of that movement, it took that movement about 60 years to reach something like legal social equality in Louisiana. And that movement suffered a whole lot of losses. And so while I would like to leave this plaza today confident in the fact that our legislature would represent us fairly and that there's not more nightmare legislation around the corner, I can't quite do that. But what I can remember is that there were plenty of people who were willing to devote decades of their lives to changing social equality, social access for African American people in our society, and that we have to have that same kind of commitment, and that we have to accept that we're going to lose some, but that if we keep at it, we're going to win some over time. And I want to close with a quote by a very famous civil rights activist, a man named Rudolph de Doon, who was part of a group called Committee of Citizens in the late 1890s, and he's the person who oversaw the court case Plessy v. Ferguson that ultimately was lost at the level of the United States Supreme Court, and underwrote Jim Crow legislation in the United States until 1954 and Brown versus Board of Education. But Rudolph de Doon says something that was very, very important, and he said, "It is well for people to know their rights even if they are denied them." And I'm going to say that again, because it is well for people to know their rights even if they are denied them. And there are many ways in which we as women in Louisiana on a routine basis are denied our rights in law. We paid for those too. So I just urge you to assert your rights as a citizen and a taxpayer, and to make yourself obnoxious if need be to your legislators, to let them know that you're here, that you're Louisiana women, and that your rights and opinions matter too, and you deserve to be represented and not reprimanded for the fact that you're a woman and that you carry the gift of reproductive capacity. Thank you.